how to do it. Let me show you how to do it.
Hi guys, so today I'll be showing you how to troubleshoot a fridge that is not cooling. So this is a French door Maytag refrigerator from my mom, and stopped working, of course. So I came out here, tried to troubleshoot it. The very first thing you want to make sure is to, in fact, let's go, is to make sure your panel is on and everything is working over here. You can touch it, it's not acting abnormal, because if this thing is acting abnormal, that will lead you to troubleshoot that, hey, your control board is definitely gone bad. So this thing is controlled by the control board that is located on the back side, and this is the control board for this particular fridge, and you'll see the information for replacement that you can use this particular one. So if your fridge is acting, the touch screen is not working properly and things like that, most likely your control board is not good. Now this thing controls everything else in the fridge, right? So there is a evaporator fan which is located inside the freezer. So if you open up the freezer from here, there's a fan back there behind those right there, and that should be blowing air right from those vents. So if you don't see any air coming out from those vents, most likely the cause would be a bad fan that will cause freezing inside your freezer, and if you have frost built up, it's not going to cool, of course. So that's the second thing you want to check. Now if you see that everything is working, you can come out here to make sure this fan is also running, because this kind of takes the heat out from those elements. Those are the not the evaporator coil, but the condenser coil. So the evaporator coil is inside, that's mainly cooling the fridge. The condenser coils are taking the heat out from the system, and in some cases they're on the side of the fridge, or in my case, they're at the bottom. So you want to make sure this fan is running and taking that heat out from there. Okay, so now imagine everything else is working, all the fans are working, it's still not cooling. Then you want to come out here, and when you plug in your fridge, you want to make sure you have a running compressor. And the way you can tell is by hearing the noise, kind of feeling it, and you can tell if it's vibrating and it's running or not. Now, when the fridge comes on, for example, if it's not working, you can unplug it, you can plug it back in, and if the compressor comes on, you will see the suction line getting really cold. Now the suction lines are one of these two lines. The way you can tell is the one going into the fridge is the line that is the suction line, or the low pressure line, you can call it, and the high pressure line is the line that's going into those condenser coils. So you can kind of track it down, trace it down, and make sure you kind of feel it. Now anyways, when you turn it on, you'll see if any of the lines are getting really cold. That's a good sign. That means your compressor is doing its job, and it's coming on. Now if for some reason you don't see any cool lines, or if you feel like your compressor is not coming on, then you want to come out right here. This is a very common issue with the compressor not running, is the capacitor. The black thing is the capacitor, and this is a relay. So make sure your power is unplugged. Of course mine is unplugged, that's why I'm touching this, but you can pull this out. This whole thing comes out, and there are 3 prongs in there which is tied to this relay basically. So there's a thermistor in there. You can test the thermistor. There are plenty of videos out there, which I'm not going in details right now, but look for that thermistor. That might be the culprit that's not coming on. This type of specific relay, you can't really test it because there's a small circuit board in there. So let me get closer. If you have something like this, which in some of the new fridge, they have these kind of relays. They run about $20, on Amazon. You can purchase one off market, whatever. It doesn't have to be the exact same model. They all work the same. This capacitor is normally 12 microfarad. Sometimes the capacitor goes bad, so you can take a multimeter and test the capacitor to make sure the capacitor is good. If your capacitor is good, most likely your relay is bad. Now, some of the relays you can tell by shaking. If you hear a rattling noise, that means it's bad. This particular one, no. you will hear the rattling noise, and the rattling is not because it's bad, it's because the copper connection in there kind of rattles when you shake it. So don't go by the rattling noise on this particular one. You know, this one, there's not an easy way for you to test it. It's better to just order one from Amazon and just replace it, and if this is the reason that your compressor is not coming on, most likely it'll get fixed. In my case, you know, I did all this troubleshooting and kind of led me to believe that, hey, the compressor was coming on, but it was not working, it was not cooling. And I could tell because I could hear the compressor kicking on. I even replaced this part, you know, with the spare one that I had, and there's still no luck, you know, it was doing the exact same thing. So I kind of had a feeling at that point that, okay, it has something to do with the gas in the system, the R143a. This is the gas that the fridge takes, and this is something you can pick it up from Walmart. So take all the precaution. You know, in my case, there's nothing in the system. There was nothing in the system. You know, it leaked out, so nothing you can do. But you know, make sure to take precautions and you know, follow the guidelines. All right. So now, of course, I had to test my pressure, and for me to test the pressure, what I had to do was, since this is a completely sealed system, there's no you know, no ports to connect to and things like that. So you can buy one of these things, you know, and this is the one I got from Amazon, bullet piercing valve, and all I did was just pierce this connection right there. You can just tap it onto, most likely you'll have one of these in your on your compressor, and this is the suction line, a separate one, you know, where you can check the pressures and you can add gas and things like that in the system. So you know, I did tap it on there, and everything is looking good right now. And what we're gonna do is, well, I already did that, so let me kind of recap what I did. So I tapped it onto the system, I connected my gauges, and I was not getting any reading. You know, there was no pressure in the system. Right now you see pressure, but I was not getting any pressure with this. So what I did was, I had my nitrogen tank right there, and you know, before I add nitrogen, what I did was, I run the compressor with my gauge connected, and when I did run the compressor, the needle starts to go down in the green zone. And the green zone is the mercury, you know, which tells me that, hey, it's pulling vacuum. So that tells me that the compressor is doing its job, you know, but it's all it's doing is just starving for gas, you know, and it's just trying to pull gas, but there's no gas in the system. So that gives me an indication that the system is empty. You know, there's nothing in the system, and of course, you know, the compressor is working, everything is good. It's just I need to add gas. But before I do that, I need to find where the leak is. What happened to all the refrigerant that was in the system? It might be a very minor leak that had been happening for a long time and eventually gave up. So again, I don't know that. So what I end up doing was, I connected this is the bottle for the nitrogen. So I connected my nitrogen with a regulator, of course, and I added nitrogen in the system right from there. This is a gauge that you can rent from AutoZone. You know, this is the exact same gauge for the air conditioning system for the cars. So I just rented that, and you know, I had to buy some connectors and things like that from Amazon, but those are cheap anyways. So I connected this side, you know, the blue line, and I added not refrigerant, but I added nitrogen, you know, from this yellow one going in there. I open it up and I charge the system up about 30 pounds of 30 psi of nitrogen. So there's been about 20 minutes and it's still holding at 30 psi. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to leave it there and just wait, you know, a couple of hours. I tried doing a bubble test, you know, so you can have one of these bubble detectors, detects leaks, natural gas, LPG, AC, refrigerants, lines, and things like that. So you can use this, and I just kind of swapped over all the connections from the copper line, but I did not see anything bubbling. You know, there was nothing obvious. I couldn't tell if there's any leak in there. Could not tell at all. So again, I don't know what happened to the gas in the system. I have no idea. Anyways, I'm not gonna, you know, try to keep finding that leak. All I'm gonna do is leave the pressure in there and see how well it's holding. It's possible that it's a very, very, very minor leak, and you know, and those are very hard to find. You know, it could be at one of these vents under the fridge and things like that, and those can get tricky to find sometimes. So anyways, you know, let's see what happens, and if this one holds for a couple of hours, most likely I'm just going to put some gas in there and you know, get it working, get it going, you know, because I've had this fridge for about 10 years and then all of a sudden it stopped working. So it's possible that it's a very, very minor leak, and it's just over time the gas, you know, eventually went low enough and stopped working. All right, so we'll come back after a few hours. Okay, so I came back after about 2 hours, and what I noticed was that the pressure did drop. You know, I didn't film it, but it was somewhere around 25. So, you know, that tells me that, hey, there is a decent leak, which is probably not on this side, but somewhere. So I removed the hose from this guy right there, and what I'm going to do is try to pull a vacuum and try to see if the vacuum holds. And I'm probably going to use a recorometer or digital meter just to see, like, you know, if there is a leak. But I'm pretty sure there is a leak because this gauge showed me that, you know, from 30 it dropped down to like 25. So with that said, that tells me that there is a leak in the fridge. You know, I may have to detect the leak, find it, and then fix it. There is some construction that was going on in her house, and you know, they dragged the fridge around a lot because they were changing the tiles. So I'm pretty sure the coils that are underneath the fridge, you know, it probably got scraped and got a leak. So I may have to tilt the fridge later and try to detect the leak from the bottom. Okay, so this is my setup for the vacuum. All I did was took that gauge and you know, this is my vacuometer, but for some reason it's not working. But I took my gauge that I filled the nitrogen with, and I connected this to the pump, and the rest of the setup is exactly the same. And I turned the pump on, and you can see it's in vacuum right now because you know, it's in the mercury stage. So we're gonna leave it like that, and then I'll see, like, you know, how I'm probably gonna leave it like that, you know, overnight, and then see how much it really drops. So they'll also give me an indication that yes, there is a leak, and then I may have to fill it up again with nitrogen and try to find that leak. Okay, so I left it overnight and the vacuum was still holding. It was a little bit down, you know, just on the, right now I disconnected everything, that's why you don't see it, but everything was you know, still under vacuum. Another way you can test it is you can remove your gauge and start opening make sure close the valve, remove your gauge, and then start opening the valve, and you'll start hearing sound, so like this, and put your finger on top of it and you'll see it sucks your finger in. That means there was a vacuum in there, now it's taking air in, which is perfectly normal. So, you know, that tells me that, you know, it's a very small leak somewhere, you know, that the nitrogen escaped, but the vacuum is holding a little bit, you know. Anyways, I'm gonna let it suck in all the air. I'm gonna put it some nitrogen in there again, and then try to find the leak. Okay, so I'm filling in nitrogen again, and here's my setup. And all I'm doing is just opening this valve a little bit and now kind of watching how much I'm putting in. You can stop it. Right now I'm at 30, or a little bit more. So I have a decent amount in there, maybe. I think that's pretty good enough. So I think I'm just gonna hold it like that. Let's close the valve. So it's nice and tight. I'm gonna open this and then remove my gauge. And this will still show you because everything else is, I mean, this one is still connected. So I'm gonna turn, well, let's open this guy and turn this off. Okay. So right now, all this, don't worry about this because, you know, this yellow lines still have pressure in there, and this thing is closed, you know, so it's just holding pressure in there. This valve is closed. which is fine. Nitrogen doesn't hurt anything. This valve is closed, so now we have nitrogen in there and it's leaking somewhere. So now you can do the bubble test all over. I'm gonna flip the fridge and look for leaks at the bottom. Okay, so now you can see I laid the fridge down, and at the very bottom, these are the coils. And what can happen is, especially if you're moving the fridge around too much and that's when it failed, you can see there's a lot of scratch marks and things like that. You can scrape over against these lines. And if you did, like this one right here, it's possible that you probably created a small leak and all the gas is out. So, you know, what you need to do is fill it up with nitrogen and do a bubble test all around the coil which you think might be exposed to the drag. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so it's been about 3 hours or so, and still holding the vacuum. So I couldn't find the leak anywhere. You know, I pulled the vacuum and right now it seems to be holding vacuum pretty good. So, you know, either it's a very, very, very small leak and, you know, it just leaks over time. One of the things that I'm wondering what happened was earlier when I put nitrogen in there and I noticed a little bit drop. What I'm thinking is, you know, I may have disconnected the lead from here, left it overnight, and then I connected the leads again to measure the pressure, but I lost some pressure from these hoses, and that might be the reason that my reading was a little bit off, because I didn't count for the loss that I've done due to removing the hose, you know. So because this thing is measuring everything from the hose in the system, you know, so it's basically this everything that you have in the system plus the hose. So the drop that I noticed, like, you know, after waiting that long was maybe because of the hoses, you know, so the leak is not that significant. So since I couldn't find really any leak, you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this can. You know, this one is a little bit used. I've used it in the past for my car. So right now it has 13. Let's see how much refrigerant the fridge requires. And that data you can read right here. And see, it says right there 5 ounce or 142 grams. So I'm gonna put like the 5 ounce or 134a. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this up, and I'm gonna bring this down to 8, and I'll put 5 ounce of refrigerant in the system. All right, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect this hose right there, connect it over here, fill it up all the way till here. Make sure this is off, because we're going to break the vacuum right from here and put the Freon right from here into the system through the blue hose. But we have to make sure we purge the line. So we know that we have the vacuum all the way. Right now the vacuum is all the way till here, but once we remove this, of course this hose is going to get filled with the air, but this valve is closed right here because this is closed. So you want to make sure that this thing is already closed all the way, and then you can disconnect this, connect this to this, inject the refrigerant all the way till here, and you want to bleed the system a little bit, just a little bit, not too much, you know, only because you're only bleeding the air that's in the hose. So you have refrigerant all the way till here, and then vacuum all the way till here, and then we break the vacuum with the refrigerant by opening this hose. And that way we can, now we don't fill the refrigerant on the pressure, but we fill it using the weight. So that's critical. Keep that in mind. And when you fill it, make sure you turn the fridge on and then you fill it. So let's go ahead and do it. Okay, so I did add some refrigerant in there, and just want to show you guys my setup real quick. This is the yellow hose that I have connected to the can, and I added about 5 ounce in there. And right now it's showing, the pressure is showing 0 because I have the knob turned off right there. So this is the blue hose. The blue goes to the meter and the yellow goes right here. So this is connected right just like this. And all I did was turn on the hose, and as soon as you turn this this valve on, I just turn this hose connector valve right here, and you know, that's when the pressure gets built up over here. So you see the pressure here, and then all you have to do is there's different ways of charging it. You know, I was charging it right from here, but you can charge it either from here. So what I did was I end up opening this entire hose, and I had this valve turn on, and I was just turning this to release the refrigerant from here. So I kind of turn it clockwise so I can build pressure. You know, this can pierce in the valve and bring the refrigerant, and then I would just close it and kept waiting. You know, I had to remove this piece right there because you want to make sure you do the weight before you do anything, because once you're putting the refrigerant in there, you cannot just put the whole thing with the hose and then measure it, because it's gonna off your reading. You know, it's not gonna give you a perfect reading. So you want to make sure you want to disconnect this, turn everything off, disconnect it, and then weight the can. And I did it that way. That's the reason I couldn't record it, because I was doing that in process. So I removed everything, weighed the can, added a little bit more, weighed the can to make sure I don't overcharge the system. So I only use 5 ounce, and the system is already charged. And one thing you want to make sure is you charge the system when it's running. So you have to turn the fridge on and make sure it's running. So the fridge started to cool. So let me go ahead and open this. You can see 11 degrees, and you can see it's nice and cool in there. And could be a little bit cooler inside. You know, I just need to put my plate back in there for it to cool properly, but that's pretty much it. You know, I put everything in there and it's nice and cool. Let's take a temperature reading for this. So it's 133, about right. The compressor can get really hot. You know, I think it's okay for it to get hot up to like 300 degrees. If you see anything higher than 300, you know, that's bad. That means it's very low on refrigerant. You know, it's struggling, trying to work very hard. So you just want to make sure it's not passing the 300 limit, you know, but for it to be 134, that's pretty reasonable. And that's pretty much it. You know, I think it's properly charged, and we're gonna call this fridge good. So hopefully this video helps you guys fix your fridge. And if you like the video, please subscribe to my channel and like the video. Thank you.